So another word for marker could really just be signal, because markers exist all through our dog's lives already, even though we necessarily didn't mean to teach them. And they really just signal that something's about to happen. A really common marker that our dogs pick up on that we don't, purposely teach them is simply the grabbing of the leash. We go grab the leash, the dogs hear it jingle, they see us holding it, and they expect to go on a walk because every time you've grabbed that leash in the past, that's what we did. So then ultimately the leash becomes a signal for a walk to happen. And then there are certain emotions attached to this signal and the expected behavior. And that's really the power of teaching markers in our dog's training. And really what we focus on with most of our clients, and the reason, if I've directed you to watch this video, the reason for that is because I want you to use your markers as a reward for the most part. And when it comes to a reward marker, a lot of times we're just using the word yes, or we are clicking a clicker. So let's use the word yes for now. And this is so important to get a grasp on because it can really elevate the success of our training. So when it comes to this word yes, typically all we want you to do is teach the dog that that word, when they hear you say that word, it signals that you're about to hand them a treat. And handing the treat is very important versus throwing the treat on the ground or releasing them to go eat food out of the bowl. It's the handing of the treat. And you'll notice why that's so important as you continue through our training system. But in short, it's because it increases engagement directed toward you. We're teaching our dogs when they hear this word that they should expect something fun to happen with us, all right? And there's certain emotions attached to giving our dog treats if they like the treats, and we want those emotions to be encapsulated in that word yes and the behavior that it signals. So yes leads to food reward. And we want to rep this over and over and over and over again until when your dog hears that word yes, until the point when they hear that word yes, that they light up in this expectation that you're going to give them food reward. And it's really important for when we're teaching a behavior. So say we're teaching our dog to come back to us. And I say, Fido, come. Fido is 15 feet away from me. He has 15 feet to either make a mistake, and he also has 15 feet where he has to navigate before he gets back to me to get reward if I don't have a marker word in place. So if I say Fido, come, and Fido turns around and looks at me and takes a step in my direction, I can mark that with the word yes. And because this connection is so strong, Fido's going to rush back to me for food reward. It's also super important for reactivity issues. So if your dog notices a dog in the park, or you go for a walk in the park and your dog is just all over the place, focused on everything but you. If you have this connection and it's really, really strong, you can start practicing this out on your walks. And then all of a sudden, when you're on a walk, your dog has an expectation that this game's going to be played. And what's happening is the walk is transforming into this event where your dog is keyed in on you and focused on you and engaged with you instead of engaged with everything else. And really, I find myself revisiting this sort of linear way of thinking with our dogs, because a lot of behaviors that we see play out, they start with a certain situation, like on a walk, and the dog develops this expectation, and that's why either good or bad behaviors play out. They're on a walk, and if they expect that a walk is going to be an opportunity to just go wild and bark and lunge at every squirrel, dog, cat, and person it sees, then that's the behavior that you're going to see play out during your walk, because that expectation is placed, and essentially your walk and the things your dog sees on the walk have signaled those behaviors. But if we can really transform that expectation, but we have to have fundamentals in place first. And that's why teaching these markers are so important, and we really should never stop reinforcing them and going through that procedure of making the marker cue and following up with it. In this case, just simply saying yes and giving the dog food. And you'll see the way in which we give the dog food is really important as well, because there's a big difference between me just standing still and saying, yes, give the food. Yes, give a piece of food. Yes, give a piece of food. Versus what you'll see in the following video attached to this, where I'm saying that word, and then all of a sudden there's this explosion involving engagement directed toward me. So there's sort of a charge up in place. My dog hears that word, and they're charging up, and they're anticipating that I'm about to do something. And we have a very important time frame between that word and the actual delivery of the food, and that's about 1 to 1.5 seconds. That's essentially the time frame that your dog's brain has to stay engaged when they hear that word and follow through with that the treat delivery, and for them to still maintain that connection between those two things happening. So we say that word yes, then we start grabbing for the treat, and as soon as we start delivering it, so usually grabbing the treat is enough for the dog to stay engaged, because that immediately is followed by handing the food. So 1 to 1.5 seconds between the signal or the marker to the delivery of the food reward. The way in which we deliver the food reward is very important. We want to be really engaging and exciting for our dogs. And we want to rep that as much as possible in a private setting until it's just ingrained in our dogs' heads. When they hear that marker word, they just light up in anticipation because they have some expectation of a food reward. And then we can practice that in our obedience to mark and reward behavior. And we can practice it out in public settings to help our dog develop this expectation that when we go on a walk, that's actually an opportunity to take food from the handler and stay engaged with the handler. Yes. 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 And Bruce. Yes. And Bruce. Yes. 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 And here I'm feeding treats while I'm walking. So I'm practicing a maintained engagement. Yes. And again, make it fun. Here's the charge up. Yes. And he's got to chase it around a little bit. But you might have to build up to that. And you'll just start with yes. 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 And then a few steps of chasing. And then slowly to where you can let the dog chase you all through the work area. Yes. Yes. Yes.